this? Episode 3 now, I think. Should be able to count them, there's not been that many so far. I was out here last night, but unfortunately I had my first foul where my GoPro didn't record any footage. All I did get to do was to make this little thing. Yes, it may just look like a couple of con rods bolted to a bit of box section, but what my plan with this is to be able to use it as a jig to hold the flywheel in, to then be able to align it perfectly on those last two axes that I was talking about in the last video. So yeah, all I've got is a piece of 80mm by 40mm box section here. Drilled 4 holes in it. I had these whole con rods left over from an old XVS 650. They were just up on the shelf looking pretty. So what I did was I've machined a couple of pieces of aluminium. And what these do is the first one pushes in that end there, and because it's got the shoulder on, this shoulder here, once it goes in, it can't go any further. But this one I've made with a point on, and the idea is that it will slide in. Oh, nice snug fit. It will slide in, and in the top of these con rods are 2 oil holes. So I drilled them out ever so slightly bigger and put a thread in them as well. And what happens is that they will lock in there and hold this point here. So even if these aren't perfectly aligned in as much as this way, like same height and at the same angle, there is still a straight point between these two sharp edges here, between the 2 points. There's still a perfect line between those. So it doesn't matter if these are not perfectly in line, because once we put the flywheel in and we put our DTIs on it, that's what we're going to be more interested in, rather than whether these are aligned. I know it sounds wrong, but it's right. The other way of doing this is there's actually 2 ways to do this. There's a tool, there's a specialised Harley tool, as there always is. They probably cost a mint, but they was made such a long time ago that finding one and purchasing it is going to cost probably more than the bike's worth. The other way, I will put a picture up about now, which shows that you can do it in the lathe. And I did set it up and started to have a little go, and then it suddenly dawned on me that I was swinging and clouting these flywheels with a copper mallet, and that's a precision tool. So why would I want to be hitting it with a mallet? So I sort of come up with this idea of making a stand that can hold the flywheel, and I will be able to align it perfectly and possibly use it again. One of the other ideas that I've come up with, I was listening to the Ride Choppers or Die podcast, which I suggest you go and give them a listen, with Chopper Steve, and they was talking and they really sort of hit the nail on the head. Something that I firmly believe in, that we should all be doing, is basically not keeping secrets about what we do and how we do it. We should be sharing our knowledge and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to be offering is basically, once I've built this engine and all the little tools and bits and pieces that I am making, which will help others, I'm basically going to offer them out. So if you're building a Harley engine, a Sportster engine, and you need a jig to be able to align it, then guess what? If you pay for the postage and basically just give me your word that you're going to send it back when you're done with it, I'll send it to you. You can use it, you can do what you need to do. I'll sort of freshen up the tips and that before I send it out. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, there's loads of other little tools, and if you buy them from Harley, they're going to cost a mint. Like this here, you'll see a little video coming up shortly of what this is. You know, but I haven't even seen these for sale. I made it. It's going to help push the bearings back on. Yeah, so that's what it's all about, isn't it? Help each other out, share the love. The only last thing left to do on this is create some legs which go across. So next job, like I say, is going to be scribe up. I'm going to cut some legs about 300mm each, put them on the underside, weld them up, and then that's going to allow me to be able to get a little bit of stability in the bench so that they then support the flywheel. And if need be, it can be clamped down or even welded to a bench or something, so it just keeps it sturdy. If you had a wooden workbench, you could potentially drill holes through and screw this down so that it's nice and solid. So yeah, that's enough of me gabbing on, I suppose. Let's get cutting and let's get welding. Awesome. So basically, that's the idea behind it. It's now got some sturdy feet. We can be clamped down, or if need be, drill some holes and screw it down onto a wooden bench if that's the way it is. Whew. It's smoky now. Let's get this welder packed away. So it's all fully welded now. I also changed the end point. I don't know what we would call these really. I changed these ends though, because originally I had them made out of aluminium, and as good as that was, it was too soft. I could see the end of the flywheels just start to like make some marks and that on there, so I wasn't too happy with that. So what I did is I actually had some stainless steel. I don't know if you can see those there. If not, I'll just show it to the camera here. I had some stainless steel. It was pretty much the perfect diameter. Now what happens is that slides in a lot more snug up to where it needs to go. So how does this work? Let's get it set up and I'll show you. Start to slide it in. So with that bolt in there, do that up. Bit more oil. And in theory, that should spin absolutely lovely. And it does. Cool. Right, so the next thing is using these dial indicators, as you can see here. What you can do is, let's make sure I get these round the right way, which I don't think I am going to. They're magnetised, so just by turning that lever to the on position, activates the magnet. Do the same on the other side. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I've got this other camera, I'm going to move it round. Hopefully you'll be able to see perfectly what I can see on these two gauges, and then you'll be able to see just how far out this crank is, or this flywheel is, and what we need to do to bring it back in line. So let's just move this camera around. So I've set it up now, so both indicators are roughly pointing up. Doesn't matter what it's on, but I have set those to 0. They both point to 0. So the idea now, let's just try and, sorry, it's the first time I filmed like this, so I'm sort of working from behind the camera. So the idea is that you can rotate the flywheel like this, and you're trying to correct it so that this indicator only moves for one segment of that dial. At the moment it's moving between -2 +3 on this side. On the other side, on this side here, it's going from -5, just over -5, to +2. So we've got about 0.007 on that side and 0.005 on this side, and we need to get it so that it's 0.001 between a pair of them. So how do we do that? Right, so I was just indoors going through the footage of how I true up this flywheel and editing the video together, and what I found is that once I actually started getting into it, I stopped talking and I wasn't really explaining how it was done. So I've decided to shut the laptop down, come back out in the workshop, set the cameras back up, and just go through and really explain exactly what it is we're trying to achieve and how we achieve it. So I've set up over to the side this time, because what I plan on doing is just using this area here to put up a few images. So first of all, I want to explain the tools that are going to be needed, or that I found useful for doing this. Basically, I've got a hardwood wedge, 1 pound copper mallet, I have 2 metal chisel wedges and G-clamp. Yeah, and I'll explain how all of those get used and what they get used for. So if we was to come over to this camera now, as you can see, I'm set up in the flywheel stand still, and if I was to rotate this on this left clock here, this one here, you'll see that I have about 2 thou still of play out on that. On this side, on the right hand clock, I still have about 1 thou deviation. So that's 0, 0, 2 on this side and 0, 0, 1 on this side. I've got a wicked little drawing here that I've done. So this is my drawing. Hopefully you can see this properly. What this is showing here, the green is illustrating the 2 halves of the flywheel, and coming off at the shafts, you'll see that I've put a dotted line through the centre, and that basically does represent just that. It's the centre line. So it's at this point here is where the points are in the end and supporting the flywheel. So when I'm getting the deviations on the DTI, I like to set my DTIs up so that they point up both sides. If you notice, I've only drawn one. I've got that one there, but you'll see why. So just ignore that down there for a second. This one here, there would be one on the opposite side, as you can see just on the footage here. So if this needle here moves in that direction, this means that this flywheel is raising, because if I was to pull that pin out, that's the way it moves. So when the needle moves that way, it means it's an increase. If the needle moves that way, it's a decrease. It's dropping. So for there to be an increase, what's happening is the flywheel is coming up. But because this is one part and it stays square, when I get the raise in the DTI, and it will come up on both sides, it's telling me that these 2 parts are wide and that the bottom part is possibly closing in. So the way I go about doing it is I find my highest point, i.e. what I'm seeing right now, and this is like obviously an over exaggeration. When they're at that point there, I get my G-clamp over the top, and it is just a case of tightening it up. Tighten it up a few turns, not going crazy. Hold it for a few seconds just to let it relax. Take the clamp off, spin it back round, and then check the measurements again. Don't forget that pin that we put in the bottom, the end of it, they tapered in. So it's got that movement for the 2 flywheel halves to move along that pin, or move on the end of it, because of the way they are tapered. If then I'm getting a low reading, ta-da, what would be happening is my dial, as we just said, would be moving in that direction to indicate a low reading. So then that's when these 2 chisel bars come in. What I do is I insert them, put them tip to tip like that. In between, I then just squeeze them together, and as you can see, the 2 ends have opened up. So I start with them together, that's how they get inserted, like that, and then just squeeze them by hand until they open up. Again, I hold that for a few seconds, take them out, rotate, and keep checking my measurements. I think that pretty much explains how you do it, what you're chasing, how you're doing it. Oh no, the wooden wedge. Why do we use the wooden wedge? In the manual it tells you, if you come to your narrow point, you can put a wooden wedge in, a hard wooden wedge, and then you can knock it down in to force them apart. I did try that, hence that's why you can see this this different colour here. And what it was doing is it was dropping wood shavings down onto the end of the conrod where the bearings are, the greases and all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't too happy with that. But the other option that you can do is, if your flywheel halves are still not perfectly aligned, so you'd be getting, if I was to draw another dial here, if you was getting one raising and the other one staying still, that would tell you that one half of your flywheel is out and the other half is fine. So if this one was coming up and this one was staying neutral, you could put the wedge underneath the flywheel, to lock it off in the bottom of the jig. So it would be, say for argument's sake, this one's higher, this one's its normal point. You could slide the wooden wedge in, like so, and then using the copper mallet, you could then strike that flywheel. You can use the copper side because it's nice and soft, it won't do any damage to it, but you could strike that side and it could then knock it back down. So that would just fine tune your two flywheels in perfect align. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put a picture up here right now of what is described in the manual of the 3 different things that you're trying to achieve. So it'll just emphasize this, as well as getting the 2 circles perfectly aligned. Cool, let's put that away. Let's go back to the camera. Hopefully you can still see that, and you can see the side of the flywheel as well. You need to have the tips of these needles so that they are on the highest point of this surface, and also you need to have them as close to the flywheel as possible. So we find our highest point, and I do actually know, if I spin that round, you'll see the needle raise and drop a few times, but I do know that in line with this hole here, because this is where we're sitting at the moment, this here is showing my high point, which means my 2 flywheels are apart. And if I spin it to the opposite side, 180 degrees, about there is my lowest point. It's hard for it to sit there because of the weight of the conrod. About there, that's showing that my flywheels are actually now together. Let's bring that back round, knowing that this here is the high point, using the G-clamp. Wind it open. I can put it on, give it a good tighten out there, just let it sit for a couple of seconds, take it off, and hopefully okay, so we're still at it. It's getting on now. What is it? Little hand is pointing to the 12 and the big hand is pointing to the 1/4 to. That is not in the afternoon either. But after an hour of squeezing and then the opposite side prying, yeah, we are kind of here at the moment. So absolutely no deviation on that one at all. And then we'll go to the other side, and it has the 001 that we're allowed. So the GoPro batteries have gone flat. Sorry, the SD card's full up, so I'm having to use my mobile phone, which is probably going to be terrible. You're all close up and everything, but I'll do this as best as I can. Actually, what I could do, turn this around, and then let's do it that way, this way. So the flywheel is done, basically. We've got it within the tolerance that it should be. It's taken far longer than it should have done. Well, saying that, it's taken a good evening's work. Yeah. So means the flywheel can go back in the engine now, which is awesome. The cases are just over there in the parts washer, as you can see, and yeah, the jig, absolutely over the moon with the way the jig's performed. As I said earlier on, if anyone else is going to be building a Harley engine and they wish to use said jig, then yeah, let me know. You pay for postage, I'll send it to you. Just got to promise me you're going to send it back. That's all I want, just to promise that it will come back. Or if someone else asks for it, just promise that it gets passed on to them. It's just a jig though. I have had to pay out for the stands and the dials. So yeah, but it's all about helping each other. And like I made that reference earlier on to what Chopper Steve was talking about on the Ride Choppers and Die podcast. Don't keep this shit to yourself. You need to let other people know what's going on. And this information, we need to share it, so then there's more people out on the road enjoying what they're doing. So yeah, I don't mean to get all deep in everything, but you know, that's what I believe in, so that's where it should be, gents and ladies, if you're watching. Cool. On to the next job. Bed first.